মালা দিব দোহার বলে। অধরে তুলিয়া দিব কর্পূর তাম্বুলে। অধরে তুলিয়া দিব কর্পূর তাম্বুলে। ললিতা বিশাখায়াদি যত সখী বৃন্দ, ললিতা বিশাখায়াদি যত সখী বৃন্দ, আজ্ঞায় করিব সেবা চরণারবিন্দ। আজ্ঞায় করিব সেবা চরণারবিন্দ। শ্রীকৃষ্ণ চৈতন্য প্রভু দাসের অনুদান, শ্রীকৃষ্ণ চৈতন্য প্রভু দাসের অনুদান। সেবায় অভিলাষ করে নরোত্তম দান। সেবায় অভিলাষ করে নরোত্তম দান। রাধা কৃষ্ণ প্রাণ যুগল কিশোর, রাধা কৃষ্ণ গান যুগল কিশোর। জীবনের মরণে আর নাহি Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Bolo.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, are you able to hear, Prabhuji? Your
My
voice
first time to Ujjain, but I'm only zoomed in.
Hare Krishna. So we are very fortunate to have His Grace Mahatma Prabhu. So we are very happy to have Prabhuji. I will just give a brief introduction about Prabhuji. Mahatma Prabhu was born in Los Angeles, California in 1950. And in 1969, at the age of 19, he met first time with Srila Prabhupada through his Bhagavad-Gita as it is, and then later that year met Srila Prabhupada personally in Los Angeles temple. In January of 1970, Prabhuji moved into temple in Berkeley, California, and shortly after received first and second initiation from Srila Prabhupada. He went on to do a variety of services, including book distribution, Sankirtan leader, temple president, college preaching, congregational development, and various educational projects. Mahatma Prabhu is well known in Iskcon for his recorded and live music, and most notably his recording of Brahms Amita, but also for his workshops on such essential topics as japa, forgiveness, humility, vows, and marriage. Prabhuji is based in Alachua, Florida. He lives with his wife Jahanva Mataji and daughter Braj and Prabhuji travels about 4 months in a year. Prabhuji is a Iskcon initiating guru and has disciples from many countries around the world. So we are very fortunate to have association of His Grace Mahatma Prabhu. So we welcome him by loudly chanting one time Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Krishna Hare
Hare
Hare,
Rama, Hare Rama,
Ram Hare
Rama
Ram.
Rama, Hare Hare Krishna.
Thank you for inviting me. And I want to help all of you in any way I can. It is my honor to try to serve you. If I can be of service, I'm here. I had mentioned to the disciples of Bhakti Charu Swami, anything I can do for you, then please let me know how I can help you. We're in Alachua, which is about 2 or 3 hours away from the project that Maharaj is doing in Deland, although I had never been there, but I was hearing about it. And Maharaj came here, but I think it was before I returned from India. He had come to Alachua. And let me tell you a little bit about myself. I was asked, well, you speak about your coming, my interactions with Prabhupada, and interactions with Guru Maharaj, your Guru Maharaj, and some questions. I have a concern that's pretty big, and I think it would be useful if you had some questions about this. I became a devotee in 1969. I'll explain my concern, and I can incorporate that with my story about how I came. I came in 1969. At that time, I think there were about 17 temples in the world, and I joined in California, and there were 5 or 6 of those 17 were in California. So where I joined was a major hub of spreading Krishna consciousness. And having joined in 1969, it's like watching a child grow up. So you get to see how things progress. You get to see where we had gone off, where we didn't go off, what worked, what didn't work, where we went off and tried to get back on track, and we got back on track, and that proved not to be on track, but that was also off. So we get to see all these things, and then we get to see how people have changed, and people's connection with Krishna consciousness changes, and how people's interest in Krishna consciousness is varied through different decades. So we're talking like 5 decades now of watching this. And I've had the opportunity to visit many, many temples. I've lived in about 15 temples, but I've preached, I don't know, maybe in 20 countries, and then more cities in each country. So I have a vision of Iskcon, and a concern about certain things, as do a lot of senior devotees, especially to the future. And one concern I have, after having been through those early stages of joining, and then after Prabhupada left, seeing what happened after he left, it was like kind of like watching the Twin Towers crumble. It just there was so much chaos. And Prabhupada even said in his books that there would be chaos when he left. And the chaos was exactly, what does he want us to do? But one of the most interesting things, aside from what he wants us to do, that was not as difficult. What was more difficult is clarifying what he said about certain things. There were certain things he said that we started disagreeing on, which we thought were clear, then we would disagree. And it was quite a strange phenomena for us, because we grew up learning Krishna consciousness and assuming we understood everything very clearly. After Prabhupada left, there were some things that weren't so clear, and we started questioning. Guru Tattva was one, Varnashram was another, the fall of the Jiva, Rasa, and practical things would come up, and because society was changing, and so there'd be more practical concerns about things. That maybe situations we didn't have when we were younger. And so we'd have to look at all these things. And then there were some disagreements amongst devotees. No, Prabhupada wants this. No, he wants that. He never wanted this. No, you're too liberal. No, you're too conservative. And so having lived through that, and having watched many, many of our God brothers just leave Iskcon feeling like, oh, we're not true to Prabhupada anymore. We haven't understood him. It became a concern. So I just wanted to, if we can evolve this discussion, maybe you've had this discussion before. If you have, then it wouldn't be necessary. If you haven't, or you want to have more of it, if we could evolve our discussion a little bit in the direction of how do we go forward in the absence of our guru, and being able to work together, and what do we do when we understand what he wanted differently? One last thing I want to place on that is that there's a phenomena, and it's a reality we can't avoid, that we understand things differently, not just because of our level of Krishna consciousness or understanding of Krishna consciousness or how well read we are, but also because of our culture. So you can hear the same thing from the same person, but being raised in a different culture, when it gets inside your mind, it goes through a filter, which is filtered through that culture. And that culture is also dependent on your age. 20-year-old in India, a 60-year-old in India hears the same thing. It may mean something differently. Again, means something differently to an American, to a South African, to a Bengali, because Maharaj had disciples all over the world. So these things are extremely important for us to work on, because we don't want dissension, we don't want rifts, we don't want factions, we don't want infighting. And I think it's so important that when our spiritual master leaves, that we don't, in the name of serving him, start fighting about what he wanted. And this is like I think the ultimate paradox. And this happened to us with Prabhupada. It still happens to some degree. You're doing, in the name of finding the Siddhanta of Prabhupada's instructions, you can do something which is exactly what he didn't want you to do, was fight about it. And dissent to the point where it creates factions and devotees go against one another. So, in terms of my experience with Prabhupada, I could definitely say that was one thing that he fought hard against, having come from Gaudiya Math and seeing what happened to Gaudiya Math. He really wanted to keep Iskcon together in whatever way he could. And he was very liberal in that sense of accommodation. This idea of the whole house, build a house in which the whole world can live. Prabhupada was willing to accommodate. My wife was just telling me today, she was reading a story. I don't know which devotee it was, but up to the day of their initiation, that devotee was eating meat and taking drugs. And actually that week at some point, maybe if not that day. And Prabhupada was so liberal. You could, it's just amazing how he was willing to accommodate people. So if you're going to build a house in which the whole world can live, you have to be able to accommodate with compassion those who maybe don't come up to the standard you would like them to come up to, or maybe don't understand things your Guru Maharaj said the way you did, but to make room for them, and also in your own mind and heart make a room for a bigger understanding. So I think that's extremely important, because after the Guru leaves, this is just there's potential, a lot of potential for misunderstanding, confusion, dissension. What to speak of, we're already in a weakened condition. And the last thing I want to say on this, I just wanted to get this off because I think it's important. When Prabhupada left, there was not a long grieving period. And in retrospect, everyone that was asked said the biggest mistake that we made is we wanted to jump in and start doing things according to what we thought Prabhupada wanted. We just wanted to make things happen without sufficiently grieving, without sufficiently considering what we were doing. It may seem like what we were doing to us was the right thing, but in retrospect, we see that much of it wasn't. And everyone in retrospect looked back at it and said, we needed a lot more time to think. We needed a lot more time to grieve. We needed a lot more time to get over it. And basically what happened was Prabhupada left in November, and in March of the next year, the GBC had passed a resolution or had finalized or at least agreed that Prabhupada wanted 11 devotees to initiate. And I think one or two were already initiating, but it wasn't official. They made it official then. So it was, we're talking about 3 months after Prabhupada left, all of a sudden there's new gurus. It was too fast because we hadn't got over, it's like your father dies and 3 months later your mother remarries and there's another man in the house. It's like, no. I mean, of course, in Indian culture, just remarrying would be bad enough. But imagine she remarried bad enough. Imagine she did it 3 months after your father died. So it was a little bit like that. We weren't ready for it. Things happened too fast, and all of a sudden it was like Prabhupada was being replaced by other gurus, and we didn't even know how to do that, what that meant. And so in retrospect, we all realized we need to take things slower. So I would just make that suggestion that it's not like you need to do anything right now. What do we do now? We have to, understand his mission and go out there and take it to the next level. We were like that. And in doing that, we ended up going against one another because we understood things differently. So we need time, to soberly think, what's going on? How do we go forward individually and as God brothers and God sisters? How do we go forward in this project? And who would you like to be in charge of the project? Does even have to be amongst your own people, or you rather have your own people? Do you want to suggest a GBC from your own people? Do you have a GBC, someone you like? All these things, go slow, think about it. These are just things on top of my mind based on my experience. So I used my time to say what was my experience with Prabhupada to say these things. I thought that was the best use of that time. And I would like you to ask questions about this. Interactions with your spiritual master, most of them were in Mauritius. I was temple president there in 1982 and 83, and then I had left and turned over the temple. I don't really like managing temples as much as I like preaching and kirtan and doing festivals. So I turned it over. And then I said, I will come back later, and I will just come back as a traveling preacher. So I came back as a traveling preacher. And at that time they were building a new temple. And the temple president at that time, his health wasn't good, and the project had gotten a little bigger than he could handle comfortably. So they asked me to take over the temple, and then I did. And then we had one GBC, and it was a little difficult for him. And so we asked if Bhakti Charu Swami could come, and so he had agreed, and so he came as a co-GBC. And I, at first, spent time with him in 1989. He had come there, and he was still translating. And I remember he was living in a room. We just gave him a room with some mats on the ground, and that's where he stayed. That's where he sat. He had a little choki, a little table. He worked on his translation, and he sat there, and then he slept there on the floor. That's what my first remembrance of him was a sannyasi. But when you describe someone, I often think rather than describing what they did, I think it's really powerful to describe what your experience was like to be with them. And I could tell some stories, but those stories are also on my YouTube channel, so you can see that week after Maharaj left, I gave class on him every day. So that's available on my Facebook page under videos. So if you just get the date, you'll see it's there. And the first video was transcribed also. I assume that transcription's on my website. So, but I'm an American, and we are raised in a different culture than you as Indians. What to speak of being raised as a Vaishnava? So Americans are passionate people. They're not considered highly cultured. They're considered, I would say, more pragmatic. They might focus more on getting things done practically. That's most important than the etiquette with which you do it. The manners which you conduct yourself. It's more kind of like in America, if you get it done, the ends justifies the means to some degree, not entirely, but to some degree. Just let's get the job done any way we can do it. And that kind of substitutes as etiquette and culture. And so coming from America and trying to be Vaishnavas, Vaishnavism, it's about humility. It's about sattva. And as Americans, sattva and humility were not something that America was deeply rooted in, at least not today. And so my experience with being with Maharaj was almost kind of like, when your dhoti is dirty and you don't notice it, you only notice it when you're next to someone who has an impeccably clean dhoti and not one wrinkle in his dhoti or his kurta. It's just like, oh, you don't have any wrinkles in your kurta. Oh, your tilak's on perfectly. Oh, you have no spots on your dhoti. All of a sudden I realized, oh, there's wrinkles in my kurta. My tilak's not on perfectly. It was something like that. Like being with him, it like made me realize, oh, without him saying anything, just being who he was, it made me realize my deficiencies as a cultured person and as a cultured Vaishnava, because he had that. And so it was, for me, I don't know if it was ever apparent to him, I doubt it, but for me, it was always apparent to me that I could just by his presence, I could learn so much that I needed to learn to be cultured and to be a better devotee. Just seeing how he operated. And also, obviously, I think we all learned that, of course, and we all learned how important it was for him that whatever we do it exactly the way Prabhupada wanted. And if we ever did something that wasn't the way Prabhupada wanted it, he really would be upset. He wanted things done. I think he was a very precise person. We worked together, but it was like he'd come for a week or 10 days and then go and then come back 6 months or a year later. So it wasn't like constantly. From what I remember in working with him, he was quite a precise person. He wanted things done in a specific way. Is that true? Is that true? Yeah, he's very, like Tamal Krishna Maharaj was like that also. Maybe he got that, maybe that's his nature, or maybe he got that from Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Tamal Krishna Maharaj was very precise. This is the way Prabhupada wants it, and this is the way we have to do it. So I saw that in him, and sometimes we may take something for granted. Does it really matter if it's done this way or that way? And so being around him, you would see what you could take for granted and what you couldn't. And there's some things, no, this is how I wanted it, this is how it's done, and we must do it this way. So he took that preciseness into many areas of his preaching and of his life. And as you know, specifically in terms of how he wanted us to dedicate ourselves to Iskcon. So to him, he felt being a precise person, he felt there's a problem, and we need to give more emphasis, not just to Prabhupada, but we need to give more emphasis to all senior devotees, all senior preachers, because you can't give emphasis to Prabhupada and not give emphasis to other seniors, in the sense that Prabhupada is your Param Guru, but that means he's your Siksha Guru. And so if we give more importance to our Siksha line of teachers, that automatically gives most importance to Prabhupada, but it also gives more importance to the Siksha Guru. And when we give more importance to the Diksha Guru, it has the tendency to take Prabhupada a little out of the center, because the Diksha Guru becomes all important. And so he understood that precisely. He could see that and he worried about it. That if too much emphasis is given to Diksha, that will also affect how we see Prabhupada, because he's not the Diksha Guru of successive generations. Diksha Guru is more important, more stress. That means eventually that stress on the Diksha Guru, the importance given to him, could start to overshadow the importance given to Prabhupada. And in the future, hundreds of years from now, Prabhupada may be seen as the founder Acharya, less relevant, and the Diksha Guru most relevant, where he wanted to establish an organization like in the Sri Sampradaya, where everyone is focused on Ramanuja and everyone is serving Ramanuja, Diksha Gurus, Siksha Gurus, something like that. So he understood this. That was his preciseness. It wasn't foggy in his mind. So I appreciated that. He was, he would know something, analyze it, get clear on it, and then demand this is how it would be, and precisely see where it would go if we did it correctly and where it would go if we didn't do it correctly. So those are I would say, in thinking of him, those are two things that I don't want to use the word impress me, but I'm thinking of another word, affected me. Those are two things that affected me personally for my own betterment, that I could, well, actually, there's two other things. The fact that he was traveling and doing these seminars everywhere, which means that he was caring for his disciples. And the fact that he was doing these seminars, retreats, and absorption in Krishna Lila means he was absorbed. He was definitely absorbed in that. he had the adhikari, he had the qualification to go there, and that he could share that with you because of his qualification. So I noticed those two things. I had been in South Africa sometimes when he was there, and I heard that he was doing a retreat, and then I found out that he does these all over the world, where he has large numbers of disciples. And I thought, oh yes, that's really nice. He's taking care of his disciples. He's taking out time and giving them time. So I appreciated that. He cares about them enough that he would do that. And that he was definitely absorbed in higher things, absorbed, which is so beneficial for all of you as his disciples or followers. The last thing I wanted to say, and I know you probably didn't intend for me to say these things, maybe others have said this, but maybe this can generate some discussion. In understanding Guru Tattva, in understanding our disciplic succession, we see that ours is not a disciplic succession of a Diksha line, but it's a Siksha line. There are other Guru and Paramparas that have a Diksha line, and they say if you're not in that Diksha line, that you're not bona fide. But we have a line that comes through Siksha Gurus, not always through Diksha Gurus. And so the importance in our line is given to Siksha. And of course, Diksha Gurus generally are Siksha Gurus. They give instruction. But the point is that the disciple will have many or can have many Siksha Gurus and will get valuable instruction from many. And as you probably know, he wanted you to understand that and take shelter of Siksha Gurus. But I'm specifically saying this for those who will have to take a Diksha Guru in the future, and you were already Maharaj's disciple. And then there may be this guilt, well, what if I take Diksha and then Maharaj becomes my most important Guru? And there's a question that was asked about this, and I think the answer is perfect. The question was asked after Prabhupada left. Some of Prabhupada's disciples were getting second initiation from their godbrothers. Excuse me for 1 second. They were getting second initiation from their own godbrothers. So the question came up, well, who's actually the most important Guru? The Guru gives you first initiation or second. And the answer was they went to one of Prabhupada's godbrothers because they were just confused. And he had like 70 years of experience. And he said, the Guru who helps you the most is the most important Guru, which is kind of common sense, but it's like we're afraid to say that sometimes, isn't it? Like I'm supposed to say, my Diksha Guru is the most important Guru. That's like politically correct thing to say. But the reality is the Guru who helps you the most becomes your most important Guru. Your Diksha Guru is always important, no doubt. But in the case of, for many of you, your Bhakti Charu Swami becomes your Siksha Guru, and he will be the most important because you're most connected. So I just wanted to add that. It looks like you have a lot of questions, unless they're just making comments or something. So should I read the question, or do one of you want to choose? Is our moderator want to choose? Prem Avatar, you want to, or somebody? Or your unqualified servant? I don't know your name. Humble, in English, humble means unqualified. Did you know that? When you say humble obeisances, it means insufficient. It means insufficient. Humble means insufficient. Except my humble obeisances means insufficient. I'm not really humble. And so whatever I offer it's not really real. So should I read the questions?
Yeah, you can read, but there are so many comments as well. So I can read the questions, those who are prominent questions.
Why don't you go through it and you can choose? Maybe there's some questions.
Yeah, I can just share a few questions. So there is one devotee, Abhishek Tiwari. Hare Krishna Maharaj. Many of Srila Prabhupada's disciples say that they feel closer to Prabhupada more than they felt to him when he was physically present in this planet. how
Yes.
can we feel close to our spiritual master and Prabhupada in their physical absence?
It's going to happen. Well, I'll give you the answer, but I want to preface the answer with, it will happen, but you can't force it to happen. It happens when you connect, when you take responsibility to further the mission of your spiritual master and the mission of Prabhupada. Now, you know how much he wanted you to work within Iskcon and make Iskcon better. So anything you're doing within Iskcon is direct service to him, and you will feel close to him by doing that. And any direct service you can do for that project, if you're in Ujjain, that's his project, or you're in Deland in Florida, or any of the projects that he's working on. Any of the things that you know he wants you to do, when you engage in those projects, you feel close to him. And in the initial stages, it's a little, what's the word? It may be a little obliviated because you're more aware of that he's not present than he is present, because you're still in shock that he's not present. So that's predominating your consciousness. But as you, over time, as you engage in service, specifically any service which is directly engaged in his projects or in projects that make Iskcon healthier, better, you definitely know this is what you want to be. You will feel close. And the interesting thing is, it's simultaneous. It's a Chinta Beda Beda Tattva, because Prabhupada had wrote a Virashtaka Ashtakam about his Guru Maharaj feeling separation, and especially feeling separation when he was seeing the disintegration of the Gaudiya Math. But Prabhupada many times said, I was never separated from my Guru. When he came to Mayapur, when they got the land, he didn't stop at Yogapith. He didn't stop at the headquarters of Gaudiya Math. And he was criticized for that. He said he didn't come. Gaudiya, Samadhi is there of Guru Maharaj. He didn't come. And Prabhupada said, they do not know that I'm always with my Guru Maharaj. I don't have to go in there. He's always with me. That was Prabhupada's feeling. At the same time, he's writing a poem of separation, Viraha Ashtakam. So it's not like we don't feel the separation. We feel that pain. We can't see, we can't talk. There will be difficulties in the absence, at least for some time we'll have to sort out, and difficulties in our own heart. But at the same time, through service, you feel so deeply connected. My personal experience is, the more you take responsibility in the service of Iskcon, in the service of your Guru Maharaj, the more you feel he's with you, because you know that's exactly what he wants you to do. And you just, it's almost like automatic. You take that responsibility, you feel the presence of Prabhupada in your spiritual master. It's like inherent within that. So we can understand Prabhupada saying, I never felt I was separated from my Guru. How could he ever feel separated? His whole life was dedicated, or at least the end of his life was entirely dedicated to his mission. So how could he feel separated? If you're serving someone, if you're sacrificing your life for someone, how can you feel separated from that person? As I said, it takes some time to realize this. Not all of you may have the experience right away, but as you're trying to realize this, and also realize his presence through his instructions, and by following Prabhupada's instructions, as you try to realize this, over time, you will feel it. And obviously you can't force it. It's not just a philosophical understanding, which will give an experience, but you'll feel it. You'll experience it. It'll happen. Don't worry, it'll happen. You may be lamenting, how will I go on in the future? You will feel close, and some of you will feel closer. Another reason you'll feel closer is based on the reason that I said initially, that things you thought you understood, you're going to go back and realize, I don't know if I understood what Maharaj was saying. And there may be differences of opinion about what he was saying. So it causes you to examine what he was teaching, causes you to examine more closely. What did he want from us? What did he want from Iskcon? How did he want us to be as Vaishnavas? How did he want us to be as grand disciples of Prabhupada? All these things you have to look at, you have to question, you have to analyze. And in doing that, you become closer. You feel closer because he is his instructions. What I feel with Prabhupada, which helps keep me close, is that when you're trying to understand what's in his heart, what's in his desire, and you're working to manifest that within Iskcon, within the Vaishnava community, like really, how can you feel any closer to a person than that? You're trying to be and live and give others exactly what he lived for, right? Let's say Prem Avatar, let's say you were a Grihasta, your father died and you took over the business. You would be so conscious of your father. This is his business. How he started it, what did he want to do? You have to study it, you have to talk to the employees. How did he manage it? What was his vision? How did he treat you? How did he not treat you? You want to learn everything. So in a sense, even though your father has left, you're more conscious of your father because you're now in his business. You're doing his business. So in that sense, if you're doing the business of your father, Prabhupada and your Guru Maharaj, you can't not be conscious of them. It's impossible. So we want to go on to the next question?
Yeah, there is another question by Gaurav Saw Prabhu. Hare Krishna Maharaj, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Can you please tell how to understand more about Guru Tattva? Is there any books to understand this in more depth?
Yeah, this year Bhakti Charu Damodar Maharaj came out with a book on Guru Tattva, and many, many years ago, Shivaram Swami came out with a book on Guru Tattva. I think Gaur Govinda Maharaj must have something on Guru Tattva. I have given many lectures on Guru Tattva. Bhaktivedanta Purna Swami, I think, has spoken. Let me explain a little history so you'll understand what the problem is, because you may not even feel that there's any problem. The history is that when Prabhupada left, we didn't really know how the newer gurus were supposed to conduct themselves, because the thought was that Prabhupada's the Acharya, so whatever the Acharya does, we should just do what he does, right? We should follow his example. That was the thought. And so then we thought, well, if Prabhupada's the Acharya, then everything he did as Guru was meant for us to do as Guru. So we should just copy it. So that's what they started doing. They started becoming little Prabhupads, having their own Vyasasanas, having their own Vyasasanas, having their own Guru Pujas every day, having their own quarters, everything, everything's very, very special. And you might say, well, what's so wrong with that? Well, you have to understand, when Prabhupada left, there were 5,000 devotees in the movement, but they were all god brothers of the new gurus. So like if you go to Ujjain and say, okay, here's the room of our Guru Maharaj, and like that. It's like, what's the problem? He's the founder, he's the Guru. If you had 1,000 other of his god brothers and god sisters there, then it's a little bit of a problem. Like, why him? Why him only? Just because he's Diksha Guru. So what was happening was that the whole concept was, okay, Diksha Guru is good as God. And then there was no concept of Siksha Guru, that other people performing the function of Guru but not giving initiation. So it was all about initiation because Prabhupada was initiating Guru. So we only knew Guru in terms of Diksha Guru. And so whenever we said Guru, it meant Diksha Guru. That's what it meant. It didn't mean Siksha Guru. We had no concept. So everything got focused on the Diksha Guru. And then all the energy went to the Diksha Guru. All the resources went to the Diksha Guru. And then all the God brothers kind of lost out. It's like one day we're all the same. The next day 11 of them are, like elevated to a position far, far beyond us, when actually nothing really happened other than they took the service of Diksha Guru. They agreed to give initiation. And so that it kind of became like this, instead of it should have just stayed like this. And so for generations, we were suffering because there was no acknowledgement of Siksha Guru. And there was also the GBC wasn't so freely letting other people initiate. So there was, then 11, and there was like 3 more. A few years later, then 3 more. They were like, it's kind of like letting open the dam a little bit. And so you may have heard this term zonal acharya. So what happened was each guru had their own zone. And so everyone who was joining in that zone, they all became their disciples. And one of the problems with that, it was some people wanted to be disciples of another guru. We had many gurus in America. If you just drive 500 miles, there's another zone, another guru. And so that created a problem because there was pressure on people. You should take from this guru because everyone else in this temple has. And so what's wrong with you? Why do you want to take from someone else? That's not the way it's supposed to be. Maybe the biggest problem that we realize that's come out of all of this is that when people were joining, because they were joining in a temple where there was a guru, it was like, that's their guru before they even know what a guru is. It's like subconscious. It's like, And what we're supposed to do is point to Prabhupada and say, that's your guru, develop a relationship with him, and then after 6 months or more, if you want to accept a guru, then you find somebody. Doesn't have to be the guru here. Don't even assume it has to be the guru here. You find somebody who you feel can bring you closer to Prabhupada, who connects you to Prabhupada. Whereas in the old system, it was that guru. Prabhupada was kind of like become irrelevant, and it wasn't like anyone Prabhupada. They would say, I have a connection with my guru, but I don't have a connection with Prabhupada. And so we realized over the years that the first connection has to be with Prabhupada. That's the foundation. And then once you have your connection with Prabhupada, you find a guru who inspires that connection, who reminds you of Prabhupada, makes you feel like, oh, this person can bring me closer to Prabhupada. So with us, it was kind of the other way. You find a guru, and he becomes everything, and Prabhupada's like, he'll teach you about Prabhupada. You'll never really understand Prabhupada. You have to hear it through him. Everything has to be explained through him. You'll never really, So no one was listening to Prabhupada lectures. Why should I listen to Prabhupada lectures? Listen to my Guru Maharaj lectures. I can't understand Prabhupada. And so that became the problem. And so it became the movement after Prabhupada left was all Diksha Guru oriented. They had the disciples, the money, the influence, and the philosophy got skewed because of that. And Prabhupada, we said keep Prabhupada in the center. Yes, he's in the center. We're distributing his books. But in so many ways, he was not in the center. Those gurus had become the center. And so Iskcon went through reform. There were lots of meetings and reformations and papers written and discussions. And to this day, it is still going on in Iskcon that the senior devotees are not satisfied. And to this day, Bhakti Charu Swami was not satisfied that we had not resolved this Siksha Diksha dilemma in a way that the senior devotees were appreciated much, much more as being Siksha Gurus. And Prabhupada was appreciated as the Guru, and all of us as servants of Prabhupada, helping our disciples get closer. And because Maharaj preached this, he was accused of being Ritvik. And in a sense, you could say he was, except Ritvik means you can't give initiation. But the Ritviks, they want to put Prabhupada in the center. They're very Prabhupada-centric. It's very healthy. It's the problem is they don't believe that Prabhupada's disciples can initiate. It's a huge flaw. So Maharaj, being criticized as a Ritvik was actually a compliment, that he wants Prabhupada in the center, and he doesn't want to take a position as a Diksha Guru that it would anyway obliviate Prabhupada from the lives of his disciples. So now you have a problem in India. Maybe it's a problem, maybe it's not. I'll throw it out. You have a couple of problems in India that we don't have in America. In America, we don't have flock mentality. We have more of an individualistic mentality. So just because everyone is doing something, the Americans think, well, let me research it. Why should I do it? In India, it's more everyone's doing it, so I'll do it. My family, my father took so-and-so as guru, I'll take him. Whereas the Shastra says, no, it's not like that. You go find who is a bona fide guru. You find the guru who is most suited to you. You find that guru who can most inspire you. You find that guru who most enlightens you. You find that guru who you're most inspired to surrender to. That's the system. Indian culture is more gang philosophy. We do everything together. So that goes against it's not bad because if everyone is choosing one guru in one place, it's not bad because the guru is bona fide. But what's bad is we don't teach people that, no, it's your decision. This is not because your father did it or because 90% of the devotees in this temple do it. You choose. There are many gurus. You listen to them. You choose. You have to make that decision. So that was something Maharaj was also concerned about, and many devotees are concerned about, because it reflects this zonal era where there was one guru dominating, and Prabhupada became. If Prabhupada didn't become minimized, then at least the 6-year guru became minimized. The value of the God brothers became minimized. And when your guru leaves, if you had close 6-year relationships with many of Prabhupada's, with many other devotees, especially Prabhupada disciples, you will find it much easier because you had this deep connection. You can have connection with the 6-year guru as deep as you have with your Diksha guru. And if you have that connection, it's going to be easier for you. Whereas if your Diksha guru is everything, I'm not really connected to Prabhupada, I'm not really connected to anyone else, those devotees will have the hardest time after their guru leaves. Those who are connected with Prabhupada, who feel a deep relationship and or have a deep relationship with another senior devotee, they'll have the easiest time because they will feel, I'm protected, guru is one, it's the same milk from a different breast, it's the same Iskcon. They'll feel that I see my guru in this guru. It'll be easier for them. So that's something about Guru Tata that relates to the history of Iskcon specifically.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for such a wonderful answer. There is another question by Sundar Damodar Prabhu. Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. We cannot express our gratitude to all of Srila Prabhupada disciples who took so much anxiety, hardships, struggles, following in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada. Maharaj, we are having fear to lose all of your physical association. My question is, Maharaj, I would say, how can we may not lose the experience, commitment, and all the realization you have shared with us?
Want me to answer one question at a time?
Yeah, there is 2-3 questions here.
Well, the disciple wants to become one with the guru. And so let's broaden the concept of guru. We can say all Prabhupada disciples, they're your uncles, they're your aunts, they're your gurus. Learn from them as much as you can about Prabhupada. Learn from them Prabhupada's mood. Try to imbibe that mood and try to share that mood with others. That will benefit you, that will benefit others, that will benefit the movement. So it's the same answer. And that way, once you imbibe what you got from them and carry it, you will feel Prabhupada's association, you will feel close to them. Being a disciple of Prabhupada, I can say, and I'm saying this from my perspective of being with them, I'm not saying it from my perspective. I don't want to say it from my perspective. So I'm saying from my perspective of associating with Prabhupada disciples, there's something special about them because of what they went through, what they understood, their proximity to Prabhupada, and watching him in action and experiencing what it was like to be with Prabhupada. And you can get that from them. You can get it a little bit from those who weren't with Prabhupada as they hear from their spiritual master, but there's some nuance that you can't replace when you hear from someone who was actually with Prabhupada and grew up in Iskcon during those times. It's special. So being around that, you will get that. You will get something special. You'll get something uncommon. And I would say get it, imbibe it, understand it. It doesn't have to be personal. The memories are there. We have, I don't know what they're up to, like 80 hours or 100 hours of memories with Prabhupada's disciples. If you just Google Prabhupada's memories. ITV has done that. It's the fact that they're here and they can speak to you about their realizations, this is, it's gonna all be gone sooner or later. Of course, there are books, but many of them were not recorded, many of them were not written. And you also feel something by being in their association. So listen, there's so many classes now on Zoom, you can hear so many classes, you can hear from so many seniors. Listen, imbibe their mood, try to understand what they understand about Prabhupada, ask them what they think would be the best thing for you to understand in order for you to be successful individually and successful collectively, and also successful in spreading Krishna consciousness as far and wide as possible. Wherever you see a Prabhupada disciple, tie them up. If you can't tie them up digitally. And if you can't tie them up digitally, at least go to the recordings. I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, you can continue to answer. You can ask more. You can ask me to elaborate on it.
Yes, Maharaj. There is another part of the same question. Please share your realization in your long practice of Krishna consciousness.
I think one of the most important realizations is to understand the value of Krishna consciousness, what Prabhupada gave, what Mahaprabhu is giving. And the more you understand it, the more you realize how fortunate you are to have it and how incredibly valuable it is and how inexpensive it is. Because sometimes we think, spiritual life is difficult. And sometimes we minimize Krishna consciousness. There's so many religions and there's so many other people and, so many devotees are not so great and so many devotees have left and we have so many problems, and that we minimize all of this. We maximize the price of becoming Krishna conscious. We minimize the value of it. It has to be the opposite. We always have to appreciate the value of it, and we always have to realize the price is minimal. And there's one other thing that I often think of. When we look at Prabhupada and what he's teaching and what he gave us, just the thought in my mind is, who else is there to take shelter of? Who else can give you that kind of shelter in this world? So that has always kept me very stable and chaste to Prabhupada. Even if Prabhupada said something that, I don't understand this, or this doesn't seem correct, according to our material experience, or what scientists say, or like that. But it always boils down to, who are you going to trust? Who can you trust? So that's always been my solace. There's so many people saying so many things. In India, you have so many gurus saying so many things. And a lot of what they say is just so wrong. And when I hear that, I think, who else can we trust? Where else can we go? What else can we do? So these are thoughts that have helped me remain inspired.
Third part is, please enlighten that mistakes devotee face in journal and practice of Krishna consciousness, so that we do not commit the same and learn from them.
Well, the main mistake is that Maya tells you something and you believe it. That's the main mistake. I was giving class this morning, and I was saying, Maya has this power of, I said a few weeks ago, Maya has this power of painting pictures. She's a good graphic artist. You look at something and she photoshops it, so it doesn't look, what you're looking at is not anymore what you're looking at. You're looking at the Photoshop version, which is how you're going to enjoy it and how everything's going to be beautiful and peaceful. So that's one thing Maya does. She uses Photoshop. And then when you see the Photoshop version, like, wow, last time I did that, it didn't look like that. Let's do it now. This looks so much more beautiful. So she does Photoshop, and then she does amnesia. Don't you remember the last time you did that, how much you suffered? No, I can't remember. So she throws amnesia on you. And then the other thing she throws on you is that, when you don't, at first you don't succeed, try again. So don't you remember? Yeah, I remember last time it didn't work, but this time we have a different strategy, so this time it's going to work. So Maya she confuses us, she makes us crazy, she makes us stupid. And my best advice is just don't listen to Maya, because anything in your life that's not Krishna conscious, it's just Maya talking to you, telling you, you should think this way or have this attitude or do this. So anything that takes you away from Krishna, it has to be Maya. By definition, where Krishna doesn't exist, that's Maya. And by definition, wherever Krishna exists, that is spiritual. So I think that's the biggest problem. And then we start hearing things, social values, social conditioning, what the media is programming us to believe. You have to have any self-worth, you have to have a title, big education, a lot of money, drive a good car, live in a nice place, otherwise what will people think of you? All that stuff. That's all just the voice of Maya. We think it's logical, intelligent, and there may be some logic and intelligence to it. But when it takes us beyond what is proper or necessary for us to be Krishna conscious, then it's Maya just talking. Work harder, get more. So you work harder, chant less rounds, read less Bhagavatam, but you're more successful. And Maya's saying, just see, you got promoted. Now that you're promoted, you get to work 13 hours a day instead of 10. And you get to work on Saturday, but you make more money so you can get a bigger flat and a nicer car. And you're thinking, I'm successful. But all that actually happened was your sadhana suffered tremendously, and therefore your spiritual life suffered tremendously. And you weren't recognizing that. Maya was telling you, take that. It's a prestigious job, there's more money. The ramifications, you weren't thinking, because that's Maya's job, to convolute your thinking so you don't think straight. That's what she does. She's expert at that. So that's what I would say. I mean, that's one thing, many things could be said. But Maya's going to put thoughts in your mind that if you believe, you're going to harm yourself. A lot of times we say it's my mind, but Prabhupada said it's Maya speaking to you. Maya's in your mind talking. And I think rather than say it's my mind, if we say Maya's speaking to me, it's easier to understand and easier to defend ourselves. Because if it's my mind's so strong, I can't control my mind. No, Maya can't stop listening. That's easier. To stop listening to your mind, because we identify with the mind, is more difficult. To stop listening to Maya, that's an entity outside our mind. Maya is speaking in your mind. Now it's in your mind as if it's yours, but it's hers. Stop listening. It's extremely important.
Another question by
Okay.
Anish Kapoor. Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam. I could not give update to a spiritual master on the tasks he gave during last couple of months. I fear that he left with the understanding that I did not take his instructions seriously. Although I had done quite some work on that, I beg for your kind guidance, your humble servant, Abhay Charan Das.
Yeah, write him a letter. You can send it to his email address also, if it still exists. Just like we're writing Vyas Puja every year, right? Those are letters we're writing to Prabhupada. So Bhakti Charu Swami, I think he wrote a letter to Prabhupada every day, telling him what he did, praying to Prabhupada to help him overcome the obstacles. So you can write a letter, tell him what you're doing. And you can write a letter in the future and tell him what you're doing. And I would also say that anytime you feel you have failed in doing something, there's always tomorrow to make it better. So you don't want to live your whole life thinking you failed, Maharaj. You just want to think whatever wasn't done when he left, I'm committed to finishing now. And he'll be pleased. And as Prabhupada said, if you can't increase it, at least maintain it. So at least do what you promised you would do. And you'll be fine.
There is one question by Sundari Adasi. Hare Krishna Maharaj, we have learned that Super Soul comes as a spiritual master. In our situation, since Guru Maharaj has left his Vapu, so how do we understand? Please forgive me if I asked any improper question.
Where's the question? I want to read it. I don't see it.
It's at the last of the chat. 2-3
The one on
questions
the
are there.
bottom?
At the last bottom 2-3 questions are there. Sundari Radhita Dasi.
Sundari Radha, okay. We have learned that Supersoul comes as spiritual master in our situation since Guru Maharaj has left his Vapu. So how do we understand? Please forgive. The Chaita Guru, the Guru in the heart is the Supersoul who is non-different from the Guru outside. So Prabhupada said, when the spiritual master is present, he guides you from outside. When he leaves, he guides you from inside. So if you adhere to his instruction, you'll never be lacking guidance because he'll always guide you from within. And the Prabhupada said something amazing in Bhagavatam. He said that the success of the Guru is that he helps the disciple hear the Supersoul. And when the disciple comes to the point where he can hear the Supersoul, then the Guru considers, okay, I'm a success. I don't even have to instruct him. Now he's getting internal guidance. So your external Guru, Chaita Guru, is helping you, purifying you, so you can take guidance from Krishna within you. And that's the job of the Guru. Because if the Guru doesn't help you take guidance from within, you'll always be handicapped in some way. Whereas if you can always get that guidance within, then the Dhammi Buddhi Yogamtam, Yena Mam Upayantite, then you come to Krishna. So that's what the Guru wants. By following him, following his instructions, that guidance will come, and you can pray for that guidance. And you can pray for Prabhupada's guidance also. It's not we're not living in three-dimensional space. So, we live in this world of what we can see, touch, taste, smell, and hear, or, see through a microscope or atomic microscope or fly to another planet, but it's still quite limited. The connection with the Guru is not limited in that way. Many, many devotees have had dreams of Prabhupada who are not Prabhupada's disciples, who never met him, not, at least in this life. How is Prabhupada coming to them? It's a transcendental system. So Prabhupada can guide you, your Guru Maharaj can guide you, and they will if you're sincere. Don't worry. You don't have to worry. You are taken care of, you're guided, you are protected by the internal potency. If you engage in Krishna consciousness, you will never be unprotected. And Sundari Radha, you may at some point in the future meet a Vaishnava who inspires you in a similar way that your Guru Maharaj inspired you. And you may find shelter there, and you may realize, oh, my Guru Maharaj sent this Vaishnava to me. He is like a gift from my Guru Maharaj. He may be different from your Guru Maharaj, but you see that same message is there, and you feel very deeply connected. So that's also possible. Not that it has to be, but it may be sometimes when we get the shelter. Sometimes we find another Vaishnava who inspires us, and we see, oh, it's a gift of my Guru Maharaj. I'm not saying you should look for one, especially not now. But in the course of your life, it may happen naturally. And then you realize, there's Chaita Guru, my Guru outside, there's Param inside, and there's this other senior Vaishnava that I've found shelter in. So you're protected. Don't worry. I mean, it can't be that you're only protected by the physical presence of the Guru. If that were true, all the Gurus now should stop making devotees, because they're not going to live that. They're not going to live as long as they're 20-year-old disciples. We should make 20-year-olds. We should actually find brahmacharis in the Guru pool, like we're highly qualified at age 13, 14, make them gurus, and let them make disciples up to maybe the age of 25. And then all their disciples will live their whole life with them. Because if we need the physical presence of the Guru, we don't want to have senior Vaishnavas initiating, because a lot of disciples, I'm sure, of Maharaj only had his association for a few years. So it can't be dependent on physical association, and it can't be dependent solely only on him. And that's why Maharaj was so adamant about staying within Iskcon, because then you have the association of so many gurus, a whole institution of gurus.
Hare Krishna, there are 2-3 more questions. If you have time,
Yeah,
then we can take.
yeah, go ahead.
So, one question is from Jagatjivan Prabhu. Maharaj,
Okay.
is there any over endeavor in spiritual life also? If yes, then how to draw borderline?
Yeah. Well, over endeavor would depend on the individual because what one devotee can do, another can't. And over endeavor would mean you're doing something that's causing you to fall into the modes of passion and ignorance, or causing you to minimize your sadhana, or causing you in some way to pollute your consciousness. As a result, you've over endeavor. You know what? Can you over, or you're over endeavoring in your sadhana to the point where you are disobeying your Guru Maharaj's order. Maybe you're chanting 64 rounds and he said, no, I want you to preach, chant 16. So that could be over endeavor also in terms of doing too much sadhana. So it depends on situations, because sometimes Prabhupada didn't want us to take on burdens, financial burdens, because he said it was too much anxiety. And sometimes he felt like if we didn't take on financial burdens, we would just sleep and life would be too easy. So it's good, there's both things. It's good to have a little stress. Bhaktisiddhanta used to have his brahmacharis collect money for projects. And after they collected the money for a project, he said, I need you to collect money for this project. And they said, well, we just did. And he said, well, I spent it on something else. So now there's no money for this project. And I think it was Prabhupada who was saying he always wanted to keep them like right at the edge. Don't be comfortable. So you don't want to use over endeavor and then in the name of becoming lazy. That would be a problem, right? Prabhu, can you wash the pots? I don't want to over endeavor. That might be over endeavor, No, it's not like that. But if you're washing pots 16 hours a day and you're not chanting your rounds, yeah, that's over endeavor. That's minimization of your sadhana. So it means any or indirectly minimize your sadhana service in specifically in a way that would be detrimental to your bhakti. Or there's another example over endeavor. You're trying to do a service, but the service requires massive amounts of resources, or it requires abilities you don't have, and you're utilizing hours and hours and hours of your time, and you're wasting so much time. That may be considered over endeavor. Maybe just not do that service. It's like there's so much time being invested and so little result is coming because it's so difficult to do, or you don't have the resources to do it, so you have to do everything yourself. And hours and hours and hours and hours every day are going by, and we're not seeing any result. So that could be an example also of over endeavor. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you, Maharaj. One last question. Dear Mahatma Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. What is the role of Guru in our life? We say we need shelter of living Guru. But when Guru leaves, we say Guru is still with us. We say Vani is more important than Bapu, and instructions of a spiritual master are there. So then, by this, how is living Guru important? And if by reading Srila Prabhupada books, we are getting Siksha and our spiritual master brings us more closer to Srila Prabhupada,
Yeah.
then what is the role of a spiritual master in our life?
Yeah.
I am not follower of Ritik philosophy, but this is not clear to me.
Okay. I'll give a couple answers. The first answer will not be so satisfying to the intellectuals, but it could be the most important answer. First answer is because this is the instruction of our previous acharyas. So even if you don't even understand why you should do it, like why do I need Diksha? I'm already chanting Hare Krishna. I follow the principles. I've taken shelter of Prabhupada. I have a Siksha Guru. Why do I have to take Diksha? Because the acharyas say you should. So that's one reason. A couple of things happen. You're officially accepted by Krishna at that time. That's the process. You're officially accepted into the disciplic succession. And now at this point, you've made a commitment also at that time to chant 16 rounds. Where let's say you're not initiated. You've never made a public commitment yet to chant 16 in front of the devotees, the fire, the deities, and your spiritual master. So now you're promising this person, I'm going to do that. So that's also part of the value of it. Now, everything else you said in your question is totally correct. And I could even take it further by saying what you could have asked and saying, I chant 16 rounds. I've taken shelter of Prabhupada. I have a 6-year guru. I'm free from my sins because of doing these things. I see Tulsi every day. I take Charna Amita. I see Jagannath. Why do I have to take a guru to become free from sins? And I have a 6-year guru. And the answer to that is, if you are not ready, for whatever reason, due to lack of faith or lack of ability to accept a Diksha guru or accept Diksha, then don't worry about it. Just keep going on. You do have a guru, and you can have many gurus in Iskcon, and you do have the holy name. The point is, like Prabhupada gives the point, he said, if you do deity worship, it'll help you bring you to Shuddhanam faster. So doesn't it make sense that if I'm qualified to do something, I should do it? It's a samskar, it'll help me. So, okay, 16 rounds, fine, I'm chanting, Am I going to go back to Godhead if I'm not initiated and I'm chanting 16 rounds? Definitely, maybe. How about if I'm going back to God if I'm chanting 16 rounds and initiated? Definitely, without the maybe. So it's something like that. If I can do it, then why would I not do it? It's just going to help. And even with second initiation, if I'm qualified for second initiation, should I do it? Yeah, because it'll help you. Is it necessary? No, but it'll help you. In some cases, we might say, for some devotees, it may be necessary. They need that. They need to do deity worship to purify them. So I think there's a misunderstanding in Iskcon based around your question that, there's a lot of people who don't feel ready for initiation, not because necessarily they're not able to follow the principles. Maybe they're just very attached to Prabhupada and they just haven't met another guru that they felt like they're ready to surrender to. That happens to people. They've always focused on Prabhupada. Or maybe in the case of some of you, it's going to be you were going to take initiation from Maharaj and now you're not, and you're just like you're just happy taking Siksha from seniors and taking shelter of Prabhupada, and you don't really feel anything strong for anyone at this point. That's fine. Don't worry about it. Keep going. And at that point, when it becomes natural and you feel ready and you want to do that, then do it, because it's a samskar which will help you. And as we said before, even if you take from that Diksha Guru, he doesn't have to be the most important, or she now, the most important, well, there's no she's yet. He doesn't have to be the most important in your life. A lot of times devotees will have a Siksha Guru, and then they'll find a Diksha Guru, and then the Siksha Guru becomes less important or neglected. That's a mistake. The Diksha Guru is not meant to replace the Siksha Guru. And in some cases, it may be that you may have a Siksha Guru for like 10 years, and that Siksha Guru doesn't give initiation. Like Bhanu Swami doesn't give initiation. So he's like, I can't find anyone to take shelter, only Bhanu Swami. But you'll have to find someone to take Diksha. So then you ask someone, can you give me Diksha? And he said, yes. And you tell him, I'm really attached to Bhanu Swami. He said, okay, I give you Diksha, but he's the main person. He's your main guru. So sometimes it's like that. The Diksha Guru, then it just becomes like an official ceremony. You're connected. It will help you. You respect your Diksha Guru. You do the, get initiated, give the Dakshin. But your Siksha is all coming, or primarily coming from this Siksha Guru. So it can work that way. So there are all kinds of ways you can fit in. It's not just one. If you're interested in this topic, Bhanu Swami has spoken about this. It's somewhere on YouTube. He's given some classes on Guru Tattva, and he gets into it much more than I'm getting into it. But he does make the natural point that if you're chanting 16 rounds following the principles, why would a ceremony like drastically change that? And the answer is it wouldn't. You're already on your way. But if you are able to do it, it's part of the process. So you should do it. It's recommended. There's a story of a man who was helping Prabhupada, but he didn't want to get initiated. And he was doing tremendous service. All the devotees were pushing him. And he was doing construction. He was building apartments. I think a Jew who was building on top of the existing apartments. In some way, he was building apartments for devotees. And he went to Prabhupada and said, they're all asking me to get initiated, but I don't want to. I don't feel ready. Or I don't exactly remember. I think he was chanting 16 rounds. But Prabhupada said, as you are building the apartments for the devotees, Krishna's right now building your apartment in Vaikuntha. So that was a direct statement that person who was not initiated was going back to Godhead. Because Prabhupada knew that this man accepted Prabhupada as his guru, even without the formal initiation. So if you accept someone as your guru in your heart and you follow their every instruction, you're their disciple. Whether you're in initiation just formalizes it. That's another important point of Guru Tattva. Who is my guru? The one who's deeply in your heart, the one you're following, the one you listen to, the one who inspires you. He's your guru. And sitting in a ceremony does not make him your guru. If you go into an initiation ceremony and you don't have faith in that person, sitting in these ceremonies is not going to change it. If anything, it could even make it worse, because at that point you'll feel like, well, I should have faith, but I don't. So the initiation ceremony is just a confirmation of that faith. It's not like an arranged marriage where, the first time you see your wife is when you take off the veil in the marriage, and then you have to work it out from there. It's not like that. The acharyas say you should study your guru for a year. So you should really know. And if that person's in your heart, when you have that initiation, you're just formalizing the relationship that has already existed. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhuji. One last question, if you want to take,
Okay.
from Vic Sharma. He is asking, will Iskcon GBC clarify how the Guru lineage, both Siksha and Diksha, be managed moving forward in Iskcon? Even small things like once a second generation Guru comes, does the person offering Arati then have to have a photo of second generation Gurus initiating a spiritual master too? Also, some sannyasis never got a samadhi because someone in Iskcon decided that there will be too many samadhis in future and it will be hard to maintain. And also in future, will there be a consistent standard to how much worship a sannyasi or guru will receive? There a kind of inequality of how this works. Will this be more standardized?
Yeah, the answer is yes and no. The answer is yes, there will be a move for standardizing, and the no side is because different gurus are different, they have different Shakti, and they also have different natures, and they also have, because of their different natures, people will see them differently, and they will want or not want certain levels of honor and worship and standards. So that will be there, but it will be much less because there will be more standards. And these things are, the guru issue is always being discussed by the GBC. I'm on a group called Shabha. Shabha is advisory to the GBC, and senior devotees, every senior devotee feels like these issues around guru need to be resolved before we're all gone. And there are some things already written about Guru Tattva by the GBC, so you may want to go to their website and see if you can locate them. A lot of that is in the Iskcon Disciples course, and I think I got a message I used to make recommendations to some of the leaders about Diksha Guru from my own experience of being one. And one of the leaders said that they're working on, I've asked him many times to expand their problem areas. He said they're working on it. And so, yeah, I just had a meeting with the Prahlad Swami, who's the minister of the Guru Services Committee, and these things came up, these concerns came up. They come up all the time. They come up everywhere. So this is one of the things you should know about Iskcon. Just because something's not resolved doesn't mean it's not being discussed, and it doesn't mean you might be thinking and seeing a problem and wondering, why isn't the GBC thinking of this? It's rare that they wouldn't be thinking of it, but they're talking about it and then discussing how to implement it, and there are many points of view and many opinions. And if it was just us three talking, it would be a lot easier. But then when you have like 50 people, then it goes to the Sabha and they discuss it, and then it goes back. It's a longer process, and it's also, there's a concern that whatever the GBC establishes in writing, it has to be Siddhanta. So sometimes they'll take longer, because sometimes we're passing resolutions that seem to be relative based on the fact that Iskcon is a unique organization, and the philosophy was not being applied traditionally to organizations, only to ashrams with one guru. And so you have to think about these things, and you have to research it. And so it takes time. And then sometimes you'll find that some devotees will have clarity on these issues 20 or 30 years before the GBC passes a resolution. But the whole GBC didn't have clarity, also due to the workload, but because they're sensitive issues. So that's a long way of saying yes.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So we are very
Yeah,
thankful.
could you send this to me? Because I'd like to have these questions.
Okay, I will share with you.
You have, Prem Avatar, you have my email address?
I was in touch with you on WhatsApp, so
Yeah.
I
All
will.
right, just send it. You can send it to WhatsApp, that's fine. You could send this question to WhatsApp. I would like to
Just a
have
minute.
these points. They're interesting questions to ask.
Just a minute. I will keep them as they will be deleted.
Okay.
Hare Krishna. So we are very thankful to you, Prabhuji, for giving your valuable time, and we express our heartfelt gratitude to your grace for enlightening us. Especially, you guided us on many practical challenges that we would be facing, or the questions which are in our heart. You told us that how we should not start fighting in the name of service. Just we should try to understand the mood and mission of a spiritual master, that is serving Iskcon. You narrated various qualities various qualities of Guru Maharaj, like his precision in doing work, taking care of his disciples. He used to take retreats and seminars, and how by taking responsibility on behalf of our spiritual master, we can feel the presence of a spiritual master even after he leaves. And you shared your most important realization, that opportunity to practice Krishna consciousness, and how the Srila Prabhupada is the ultimate shelter for you. You guided us on how we can continue to have the realizations from so many Srila Prabhupada disciples by learning from them, imbibing their teachings, and sharing the same mood with others. You very nicely answered that how the something which takes us away from Krishna, and it shows the Photoshop version of the actual reality. So, and you very nicely answered various questions on Guru Tattva. In very detail, you explained these points. So, we are very thankful to you for giving your association, taking out your time, addressing all these questions which are within all of our heart. So, we beg for your blessings to empower us so that we can follow these teachings and become a loyal servant to Guru Vaishnava and Srila Prabhupada, and continue our services in Iskcon. And we humbly request you to kindly visit Iskcon Ujjain whenever you are coming to India, and we seek your more of associations. Hare Krishna. So we thanks Prabhuji by loudly chanting one time Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. His Grace Mahatma Prabhu ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Gaur Premanande, Hare Hare Bol. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.